abode of Chef Nephi Craig, who is the chef of, please help me with this name, Cafe Gohzoo?
Cafe Gohzoo.
Gohzoo. Okay, got you. Living up here on the Apache Reservation. He brought me around today. We talked a lot. We saw a lot. But I can't wait for you guys to hear the history, sort of the unwritten history from, a person who experienced it, which is probably the most valuable thing that we could have as human beings. All right? So, Chef, how are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great today.
Nice to have you, man.
Yeah. I'm really happy to be here.
Right, it's been a long time coming, huh?
Yeah, man. I've been listening to your podcast since the episode 1, and 2, and 3. I was like, this is awesome. Yeah. So I'm really happy you're here, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. So earlier today, I drove up into the reservation. How many acres is the reservation?
We're 1.6 million acres in northeastern Arizona.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Out of that acreage, what's usable? Because a lot of it's like, forested land that you can't use, right? Yeah,
a majority. Well, a lot of it is usable. We say that it's one of the most calorie-rich areas of Arizona.
Okay.
The climate, with climate change, things are changing a little bit, but there's so much flora and fauna, from wild ingredients to wild game. We have cattle associations in the mountains. So the land does get used. Timber was a big industry back in the 70s and 80s, but it's kind of gone down a little bit.
Got you.
But, to us as Apaches, it's all usable because it's the ancestral landscape we got left. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm. Well, on the show, you're a chef there now. Mm-hmm. We're going to go all the way back, and I'm talking all the way back to the 1800s, as Chef let me know earlier. So just give us a little background on the Apache people and the land up here.
Yeah, well, we're coming from the White Mountain Apache tribe, and we're up in northeastern Arizona where there's all 4 seasons. The White Mountain Apaches are in a group of other Apaches that we consider the Western Apache group.
Okay.
There's the Tonto Apaches, the Yavapai Apaches, the San Carlos Apaches, and the White Mountain Apaches.
Heard.
And all of us are in Arizona. And so we're the Western Apache group. The Eastern Apache group is like the Mescaleros, Chiricahuas, Jicarillas.
Got you.
A little more notable. And then so in our group, most of us in our regions have been in this part of Arizona for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. And so for us, I'm from the White Mountain Apache tribe. My mother's clan is Bixun, which means they paint their moccasins yellow.
Okay.
And is categorized as like a butterfly clan. And my dad is Navajo from the eastern side of the Navajo Nation in New Mexico. And so my family lineage goes back, a long way in these mountains.
100%.
With our traditions and our ceremonies. The Apache people become really notable around the 1800s because at the same time that America was being quote unquote developed or America was being colonized, there's all these occurrences like, say, the Lewis and Clark expedition, the Louisiana Purchase, and then all of a sudden the gold rush. All of these cultural phenomenon in America caused all this migration of settlers coming into our territories. But they were passing our region. They were filtering through, but they were heading to Cali. They were heading to Washington. So we were seeing all these changes throughout time. And it wasn't until after the gold rush in the late 1800s when Geronimo comes into the picture. And he's not a part of the Western Apache group. It becomes notable because of the last military campaigns to capture Geronimo.
Gotcha.
A lot of that history is tied to where we were just driving around here today. Mm-hmm.
That's so dope.
So there's a lot of legacy, a lot of resilience and power packed into that little rezzed out community we cruise through today.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's where I grew up.
Very cool. What did your parents do growing up?
My mother and my father, my dad was a United States Marine.
Oh, dope.
He was a police officer. He did a lot of different things. He was a cartoonist and a singer and a songwriter.
Really?
Yeah, he created we say it's like the first Navajo superhero called Mutton Man.
Yeah, Mutton Man.
Yeah, and
I like that.
Mutton Man got his superpowers because in Church Rock, New Mexico, in '76, I think.
Yeah.
There was the biggest uranium spill, bigger than like Chernobyl, but no one ever talks about it. So this spill happened, or it's on par with like Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Or 3 Mile Island, I mean. And so it spilled, this uranium mine, this dam broke, and it spilled into the river.
Yeah.
And out on Navajo land, and there's, Navajos, they herd sheep, and they have sheep. So my dad spun that really fucked up story, that narrative, that truth, and created the superhero out of it. And so it starts out that Mutton Man is just a regular Navajo guy herding his sheep, and his sheep walk across this contaminated river. He doesn't know it's contaminated yet. Yeah. But he takes off his boots to walk through with them. And then later on, they butcher a sheep and they eat it, and he gets his superpowers. You know what I mean?
Oh, word. Okay.
And I would later come to know that he's like my dad's alter ego. He fights justice. He fights crimes. He fights the colonizers and shit. He fights the government. You know what I mean? He's like all about that. But my dad did that, and a lot of things. My mother, she was our tribal council secretary for a long time when she was young. Yeah. She worked in behavioral health, and she also was a councilwoman for the Apache tribe for a while in like the early 2000s. A couple of terms. So the family has kind of always been active in some of these themes that we'll talk about, like tied to food and health and that kind of thing. Yeah. Both really important characters. My dad's passed away in 2010. But my mom's still with us and still going strong.
Yeah, I saw the sign when we drove by the house for councilwoman.
Yeah,
so,
that was a surprise to me.
Man, that's dope.
Yeah, man. Yep.
Trying to make a difference, Sort of explain to me. So I went to school at Johnson Wales, and one day they had the I'm forgetting the name of the Narragansett Indian chief. He came to our school to talk to us about basically the way that the reservations are governed. Can you elaborate a little bit on how your economic system works?
Well, all reservations are different. They all kind of have the quote unquote right to tribal sovereignty, right? Basically to govern themselves. So most tribal reservations, they have a tribal council, and it's almost like mimicking the colonial powers that control us. You know what I mean? So there's tribal councils, different legislative branches in the government, the law enforcement, the education systems. So it's very much the same on our res. Yeah. So we've got a tribal council, and we've got a vice chair and a chairwoman. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it works, and it's been that way for as long as I can remember.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. So I saw the house that you grew up in. Yeah. Which was what time frame were those houses built?
The neighborhood I grew up in, the houses that's called Whiskey Flats. Yeah. And those were built, I think, about like 74, 75.
75, gotcha.
Because my parents moved in like 76. So, yeah. Yeah.
And something that I mentioned to you was driving around there, it reminded me of Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. Like the poorer parts of Puerto Rico, where it's like, the government came in, they took what they needed, and they just left everyone behind to their own devices, and, with no assistance. And we talked a lot about, growing up in poverty, but not knowing that you were in poverty. Yeah. When did you first find out, like,
I don't know. I think it was, I wasn't even until I was like in my line cooking years. You know what I mean? Right. It was like when I started to realize like the food I'm cooking, we could really never afford. You know what I mean? Like I was like deep into in the weeds already, learning and cooking and all this. And it started really kind of connect the dots. Simply because I was trying to understand, like, what ingredients could we use back on the res? Yeah. What would be acceptable on the res? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it wasn't until I was, like, later, in my, early 20s maybe, that it really kind of hit home. Yeah. That the way I grew up on the res was very different from anywhere else in America. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and it's kind of been an evolving thing to try to carry that and process it, and also to do things at home now that kind of invigorate the community too.
Yeah, for sure, man. You're doing a lot for that community, and we're going to get into that for sure. Cool. So when you were young, what were you into?
Man, always creative stuff, because my dad was always drawing and scribbling and bringing military stuff and gear and all kinds of shit like that, So definitely always wearing camouflage and cargos and playing with, toy guns and all that. Yeah. Out on the res, you always have a pocket knife, you know what I mean? Yeah. You always got a pocket knife, always got a lighter or matches. Yeah. Because you're taught when you're young, man, to respect the fire, to how to cook on a fire, how to, use it and all that stuff, and have a knife because you're making spears. So the knives and the fire and the creativity, and I got into skateboarding and, punk rock and hip hop music. That really kind of was my window to the world. You know what I mean? The skateboarding is something I still do when I can, but the skateboarding really, really kind of set my mindset never to give up in cooking. You know what I mean? And other things in life. So those are some of the real major creative forces in my life. You know what I mean?
Got you. When did you first sort of start cooking? You say you learned fire early, so you probably early on.
Well, when I was growing up, and my parents were going to ASU for a while in Phoenix, and I was in a preschool class there, and I remember taking my preschool teacher would do a baking class. Yeah. And in this class, she would always say cooking or baking is like art and science. Gotcha. And as a little kid, 5 or 6 years old, I'm like, what the heck, you know? Like, what does that mean? But that would stay with me, and I use that all the time now. So I remember baking back then, and then here on the res, my grandfather grew a garden. Yeah. And he would grow corn and squash and had pear trees and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So he just kind of grow up out of necessity doing that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think when I really kind of realized cooking was a source of money was when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I would bake brownies and cookies and bag them up and sell them on that street where we were at today. Okay, got you. So I'd bring in a little bit of spending cash or help to buy milk or eggs. Yeah, you know what I mean? I felt all cool because I'm just a little dude. Yeah, but you're helping My dad's out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, going to school. Yeah. And it's just me and my mom and my older brother. You know what I mean? Dope, man. So that's kind of how the seed was planted, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, you, it sounds like you had a strong relationship with your father. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he was in Albuquerque at school, like, that didn't matter? Like... Well, it was a good relationship. I think I think he did his best to be there for his sons because of how he was raised and his dad. Mm-hmm. But my dad definitely struggled with his own alcoholism. Yeah, and he wouldn't get sober until I was like 12 years old. You know what I mean? Gotcha. And so from that point on, a lot had already happened when I was little. Yeah. So a lot of it I remember, some I don't. But from the time my dad got clean in like '92. All the way until he passed in 2010, he was clean or sober. You know what I mean? Got you. So that's where his life really changed, and the life stabilized, and we began to learn more about ourselves as a family. You know what I mean? Okay. So a lot of that, and that's like, as I got older, I went my own journey. You know what I mean? Got into cooking and the whole world of cooking. Yeah. So it's he's a big part of that too. Got you. Mm-hmm. What was your first sort of? Obviously, you were cooking from a young age, learned how to manipulate fire. And then you were selling brownies and cookies, right? When does that turn into like, okay, I think I'm going to cook for a job? Oh man, I think my exposure to the world of chefs was through the Discovery Channel. Gotcha. Through the great chefs of the world. Yeah, or great chefs of France and great chefs of Louisiana. Yeah. You know what I mean? Those old like VHS videos where you can hear the hood roaring in the background. Yep. And all the dudes are doing are just working with their knives. There's no flash or glamour, no lighting. Then I'm going to do this. Yeah. It's these dudes having like hard, thick German accents, French accents, Asian accents, Louisianan accents, all these different regions. And I'm like, wow, man, that's so cool. Like they're using these pair of knives and turning vegetables. Yeah. Like I could probably do that, because I got a pocket knife, So to me, I was like, wow, that's cool, because I was already like making spaghetti and doing stuff at home. Right. But seeing that on a different level, that was that like sparked my interest. Gotcha. But I didn't make the decision to go to culinary school until after I got out of high school. Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't even know what it was like. I never even had a restaurant job before that. Yeah. What jobs did you have in high school? I didn't have any jobs. I heard that. Selling weed. Skateboarding and selling weed. Whatever, bro. That's the life. Yeah. So then you decided to go to culinary school. And what are your parents thinking? Man, the way I got into culinary school, in high school I didn't have good grades. I didn't take my SATs. Right. I did good in like English and science and art. You know what I mean? And I wanted to do something creative. But my dreams of going to like university or anything, it just wasn't realistic for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, I was like, man, fuck, what am I going to do? Like, what the fuck? I was like, and then so I had to make a decision. And this is kind of where it like life showed up and like pushed me into what I'm doing now. Yeah. Is when I was young, I caught a case and I got in trouble. Gotcha. Right? When I was straight out of high school, I was like, I'm going to take a year off and just do whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I'll figure it out after. And then that year didn't even make it like 9 months. Yeah, I got in trouble with the law. I got on probation, and I had to make a decision because appeal is like, you're